Hey, I'm Jake and welcome to Choo. In this video, I'm going to be cooking a wild hare stew from a rabbit that was hunted and harvested and gifted to me by a good friend of mine in a medieval style. So I'm only going to be using ingredients, spices, herbs, and vegetables that they would have had access to in medieval Europe or the Middle Ages back in the day. It's going to be a lot of fun, so stick around. So one of my best friends in the entire world, Brittany, blasted the shit out of a hare on her property, and knowing that I love game meat and hare in particular, was so generous enough to give me a couple of backstraps and the legs, essentially, the hare. Brittany is a bad motherfucker, by the way. Award-winning, internationally recognized taxidermist, epic hunter, all-round champion, was my best man at my wedding. Actually, I had like 5 best men because I couldn't pick, but Brittany was one of them. Best person, I should say. Love you to bits, Brit. Thanks for the rabbit. So I was saving his hair, to make a video out of. The issue is, I'm not just cooking for myself, I'm cooking for my goddess of a wife. The problem with that is my wife is on a pretty brutal elimination diet just because of a few gut issues, so all of my favorite ingredients that I would usually put in a stew, I can't use. I made sure that the mighty Quinn, my wife, wrote this stuff down. But I mean, look at this. Chili. I own and run a fucking hot sauce company. That's what I do for a living. Can't eat that anymore. Eggplant. I just grew 400 of these. Potato. If it's good enough for the mix, it's good enough for us. I come from Irish descent a little bit at least, so don't at me mix. Tomato. I'm tomato daddy. I grew like 40 kilos of these. Gluten. Garlic and onion, the two things that have to go in a stew. Can't do it. Obviously it's no fault of my beautiful wife. So I started thinking, what can I do considering all my favorite foods, and not to mention they're all Quinn, my wife's favorite foods as well. How do we make a stew worthy of a video? And then I started thinking, medieval motherfucker. Half this shit was stolen from the Americas, right? So they didn't even have this in medieval Europe, yet people were eating. Look, medieval food's known to be rather bland for the most part, but we can take all those ingredients and muck around, and that's exactly what I did. So obviously they wouldn't have had a state-of-the-art combustion heater like this, but they would have had a fire, and a lot of medieval homes, especially during the winter, would use their heating source as their cooking source as well, because why wouldn't you? You're cooking on fire anyway. They didn't have gas or electricity, so why wouldn't they heat their house and cook the food at the same time? It might not be an enclosed one. If it's a poorer person, a lower income earner, a lot of these guys didn't have an income at all per se. You'd cook on an open fire. If you are of nobility or somewhere else, a lot of these guys would probably have a separate kitchen, right? But for the average punter, which is 99% of people back in the day, your heater is your oven. So you would also cook and heat the house at the same time. So that's what we're gonna do. If you don't have a heater, or it's summer and you want to cook this stew, just throw it in the slow cooker. Obviously I use electricity a lot. I live in 2024 at the time of recording. I use the slow cooker all the time, but I'm gonna be lighting this today anyway because it's cold and I want a fire. So why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone? All right, let's get cooking. Nice. Alright, so the fire's going, and whilst that's warming up, let's run through some of these ingredients. We've got leek, definitely accessible, spinach and chard, whatever, some root vegetables that they would have had around the time, mushrooms, they would have had wild mushrooms, obviously not farmed ones. It's a little bit early in South Australia to go foraging, but if you do like foraging, and this is the first time you're watching my channel, go and check out our foraging playlist because we have a ton of videos on how to go and find edible wild mushrooms. These are store-bought, but for the sake of it, whatever. Got some European-esque herbs here. We got thyme, sage, parsley, rosemary. This is a great combination of herbs for game meat. I will put that on pretty much anything. And we've got some bay leaves. Now the Romans brought bay leaf over during their occupation, so they would have had bay. I'm not sure how much culinary use it would have got. Definitely some medicinal use, but fuck it, we're gonna throw it in there. Spices. Now, sugar was considered a spice at the time. They would have had like a cane sugar, grated that off. I'm just using raw sugar because like I said, this is an approximation. Food was very, very different back then, even though these all derived from that. A carrot didn't look like this, for example. Some things remain relatively unchanged. Carrots have changed quite significantly. Jesus Christ. That was something not great. So we got sugar, cloves, a little bit of nutmeg, don't overdo it on the nutmeg, a little bit of cinnamon, don't overdo it on the cinnamon. Porcini salt, so they would have used salt, potentially. We'll talk a little bit about porcini salt, which is just my own combination of wild porcini mushrooms and salt, and some black pepper. Now the black pepper originated in India, I believe, historically, but by this stage there was a significant spice trade. Remember the medieval or the Middle Ages, is a period that generally historians say went from 500 AD to 1500 AD essentially, right? So it's a 1,000-year period. If I made a stew in the year 500 AD, it probably wouldn't look like this. I probably wouldn't have had pepper. If I'm in Europe, if I made a stew at like the end of the medieval period, this is roughly the time when Columbus was going over and stealing a whole bunch of shit from the Americas and just slaughtering a whole bunch of people. Those are the days. But anyway, no, he was a real bastard man. But he did bring a lot of shit back to Europe. Technically, I could have had potatoes and onions in the medieval period, but it would have been like literally the last 2 years of the medieval period. So we're sort of aiming for something roughly around the middle of the Middle Ages, Middle Ages. Spices were only brought out, including sugar, at very fancy events. The poorer people definitely would have had access to herbs, absolutely would not have had access to some of these spices. One thing to consider when we're talking about medieval cuisine is it really varied quite significantly from region to region and from class to class. The poorer people absolutely would have had access to herbs because it doesn't take much to throw some of those in your garden and off your pot. Spices are a lot rarer, a lot more refined, and only the super affluent had access to some of these spices, including sugar, really. However, they would have only brought these spices out on very special occasions when the affluent were entertaining their pompous git friends. Food was about pageantry. The average rich person, unless you're like absolutely unfathomably rich, like the upper echelon, they wouldn't have had that much spice in their food day to day. They would have only really, like I said, brought it out when they're having guests around and they want to show off. Most spices were very, very expensive, so you'd only bring this out to sort of be like, bah, look at me, bah. But you know what? I live in 2024 at the time of recording. I've got access to these spices. They would have had them in the medieval period. My wife could eat them without exploding, so I'm using them. And of course, the star of the show, le HARE. Okay, so while the fireplace is heating up, let's chop this shit and get it in the pot. Now, if I was doing this in a more modern technique, or I could be bothered, you know, I'm a bit of a lazy bastard, I probably would have wanted to fry the leek in some oil, get it all nice and crispy, semi-caramelized. People say caramelized all the time, but they fail to realize that it takes like an hour and a half to caramelize it. I've been guilty of that. I say caramelize, it's half an hour. No, it takes like an hour and a half to 2 hours, really low heat. Like charring it up releases a lot of flavors. I probably also would have browned the HARE prior to this, but if you're doing 16, 20-hour days in the field or whatever it is those little peasants did back in the day, you're not going to be bothered with that. You're just going to throw it in the pot. This is a borderline pottage stew. Something else we could have added here is red wine and vinegar. I'll probably add a little bit of vinegar. Don't have any red wine on me at the moment, and I can't be bothered going to the pub, but they definitely had vinegar and red wine back in the day. In fact, I did a video, check it out, Cameline sauce. This is a medieval sort of French sauce that you could buy off the street, and it's red wine, bread, and vinegar based with a few little spices, similar spices to what I'm putting in here. So certainly you could throw some red wine in here if you could afford it back in the day. Let's mix this motherfucker, yeah. Hey, up top, up top, up top. Yes, good girl. Now, the star of the show, the HARE. God damn it, I love HARE. It is probably one of my favorite meats of all time, if I'm being perfectly honest. It's still got hair on the hair. Thanks, Brittany. Nah. Brittany's gorgeous, and I am forever grateful for that. Maybe not forever, maybe, you know, a couple of weeks. I'm going to use about a cup or two of apple cider vinegar, not because I think it cures cancer, but because it tastes fucking great. It looks like urine, though. Doesn't smell like it. If your urine smells like that, go and see a bloodletter. Spicy times. Again, this is pretty decadent for the time. Pretty common these days, though, isn't it? Fucking look at that. Oh my god. Yum, yum, yum. That's fucked. This is going to be quite delicious, despite having all my favorite ingredients absent. Not all of them. I mean, I love all of this stuff. I just would have rather put some tomato and chili in there. But, you know, whatever. When life gives you IBS, make medieval stews. Yeah! Right. So now I'm just going to add just enough water so the HARE is semi-submerged. I don't want to completely cover it. Remember, the vegetables are also going to release a fair bit of water. If you want to get things started a little bit quicker, preheat your water. Don't want it boiling though, because you don't want to like broil the meat, but it'll help warm the pot up a little bit. The best part about cast iron is that it does distribute heat really, really well and retain that heat. The downside to cast iron is it does take a little bit longer to keep going, but I I fucking love cast iron. It's indestructible to last a lifetime if you take care of it. Let's rock and roll. Look at that. Oh my God, that looks good. God damn it, that looks good. All right, let's get this thing on the fire. Right, so that's gonna take like, I wanna say 6 to 8 hours. You can speed things up, like I said, if you browned the rabbit a little bit first, maybe fried up some of the vegetables, had a more controllable heat source unlike this. 6 to 8 hours is a good way to get that hair nice and just drippy off the bony. Drippy off the bony. Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, look. If you're very, very lucky, I might give you a little bit of the scraps. I won't. No, I won't. Alright, so I've got about 6 or 8 hours to kill before dinner. And if you're like me and can't be bothered doing any of your household duties, your chores and whatnot, you're going to want to find something to kill the time. Hang on a minute. What's all this then? Alright, this ought to do the job. Right, so that's been about 8 hours or so. That's been about 20 seconds. So I think I'm just going to play Fallout for the next 6 hours. I mean, what are you going to do? Yeah, like I'm not going to not play Fallout. So it's been about 4 hours of hardcore Fallout. Let's check this out. Yeah. Oh man, that's looking good. Yeah. Oh wow, what the fuck. Man, that looks really good. Taste testaroon. Oh, that's quite good. I can definitely taste the spices. Adjust as you go, because I just winged the spices. A little bit more pepper, a little bit more porcini salt, I think. So. It's only been about 4 hours, but that meat is quite soft already. I'm going to let that cook a little bit longer. Then I'm going to let the lid off. Don't let the lid off, I'll just let it off. Just let it get away with whatever it is it's done. And so I can, what the fuck am I talking about? I may have been drinking mead. Cook for a little bit longer, the meat's pretty good. Then I'm going to take the lid off for the last hour and let that reduce and thicken up a little bit. My glorious wife has returned! You hungry? Shut up! Shut up! You hungry? Alright. I got a stew for you, baby. I got a stew for you. Give me a kiss, quick. Come on. Alright. You finally got my camera person back. Now, it's time for some stew.
What do you mean it's time for stew now? I was expecting this on the table when I walked through the door with my martini. And you in a little pinafore dress.
You said you weren't drinking anymore. Martini.
Yeah, we've all said that in our lives.
Right. Here we go. Oh, bloody hell. Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, it's on, is it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just comes on.
It just comes on, does it? Why don't you say the things that we say, like, go or action?
I don't know, I gave you a thumbs up.
You did not give me a thumbs up. Well, that's been my version of a medieval stew, I guess. Who knows? I don't know. It's been a long fucking day. That's a bit of a shit outro, isn't it? A bit sad, isn't it? Hey, so that was fantastic. And then I may have had a meat or two.
I've been Jacob. This has been Choo HARE stew.
I've been Jacob. This has been Choo, and you've been watching Choo. No, I said that.
Oh.
I've been Jacob. You've been watching Choo, and that was a medieval stew. Shout out to Brittany. What a fucking champion for getting us this hare. I have to sit down and eat this now, like, properly, so I have to turn the camera off. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit all this YouTubey stuff, share it all around, and I'll see you in the next one.